It's our community, and I'm back again to welcome you and to introduce you to somebody who is our neighbor and part of our community and does very interesting things. And her name is Janalea Hoffman. She is a music therapist. She owns Rhythmic Medicine and Sounds of Comfort, two different businesses. And I think what you do is so interesting. Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Well, I'm delighted. I know that you do healing concerts. What is that?
Well, a healing concert is something that came out of my work as a music therapist and working individually with people and then doing large seminars. And then the last 5 years I've worked at Shawnee Mission Hospital, actually going into rooms and working with people and playing live music and also doing other music therapy techniques. And one of the things that I have found is that the live music is so effective, and it's just more healing than you would even imagine. And as myself as a music therapist, you know, I obviously know it's healing, but there was something so magical about patients who really needed their emotional and spiritual needs addressed, which is something you can do with music.
Through music.
And often in a hospital setting, it's just the body. So, but it's very labor intensive to go room to room, you know, for every single person. So I thought, wouldn't it be great to do a healing concert where you have a whole audience and I could do just one goal is introducing people to the power of music, how it can be a great tool on your wellness journey.
Do you notice any difference in the results that you get by working with because in a healing concert you have maybe 100 people. Is there any difference between working with that big group and working with someone who's in the hospital?
Well, there is a difference. In the hospital, it's usually a lot shorter, and of course it's one-on-one often, or sometimes it's family members and a patient or a couple patients in the room. And so it's very intimate and very geared toward that patient. I try to really do what that person needs the most.
And you talk to them as well. Do you not?
Yes, I talk to them as well. Whereas the healing concert, I have a slide presentation that I give about how music affects our brain, and then it's divided into sections, like music affects our brain in a physical way, in an emotional way, a spiritual way. And so we have music that fits those categories. And so after I do this tutorial and explaining about the research about how music actually affects our immune system and how it affects us emotionally, then we play emotional music. And then I encourage the audience and I tell them how to listen more actively.
Okay, if I were part of your audience, how would you, because I think people really would like to know, what is music therapy? I mean, you know, we hear about massage therapy and this kind of therapy and the other kind, and now we have music therapy, and they don't know exactly what that is. So if you could just kind of put a little definition in a box for us.
Okay, I can do that.
Okay.
Here's a good way to understand the difference. Music is powerful in general, but you have your recreational music, which, you know, if you go to a concert and that kind of thing tends to be more recreational. Music therapy is different in that our goal is to have a therapeutic outcome. So
in other words, to be better spiritually, physically, whatever, when you finish than you were when you started.
Right, versus just not, I mean, recreational is important too, and that can be therapeutic. But for example, I have some music that I've written at exactly 50 beats a minute, which lowers heart rate and blood pressure, because your body tries to synchronize to an external rhythm without you even being conscious. Your body does that.
Well, I know that you normally use a flute. Can you play something that's 50 beats? Do you use that flute to do it?
I don't usually use, I can play it slowly. I don't usually use, I have some recorded music I use for the 50 beats just because it's
but you know it's 50 beats.
Yeah, and it's very steady. But so the therapeutic aspect of that would be using the music to actually lower your heart rate and blood pressure.
Okay, could we see the flutes?
Sure.
I know these folks would love to see. Turn that turtle around. That's, yes, I love that turtle. Now, that is not what it appears. It is a wooden flute.
Right, it is.
And
it's
it
Native
has
American style.
Okay. I'm at a concert, a healing concert.
Right, and so I'm just going to play something soothing.
Soothing, good. Beautiful. That's beautiful. Now, you have another flute that has a different timbre. Will you play the other one? And then we can talk about the two. I just think this is fascinating.
This is a bass flute, so I tend to play this more in hospital rooms, and I play this more in the healing concerts too because it's so mellow. I'll just demonstration's the best way.
Okay. Beautiful. Can you, when you look at the audience or when you look at a patient, can you see anything happening? I bet you can.
I can, and a lot of times tears will come and people will say, wow, I didn't even know I had this sadness. I didn't know I had tears in me. And then they'll get in, the music helps them get in touch with fear and anxiety that's there, but it's real bottled up in a hospital setting. And the music just helps it to flow out. And sometimes they'll apologize, and I always say, no, this is great. Because the laboratories where people have taken actual tears in have shown there are many toxins that are in our tears. So when you're laying in a hospital bed and you cry, a lot of times it's just toxins coming out, and that's really needed. And then people will say, oh, I feel so much better now.
Isn't it amazing, though? I mean, we're talking about two wooden flutes here. And isn't it amazing the power that the sound that you can make through that flute has on the person? To me, that's kind of overwhelming.
It really is. But sound is so important to human beings, and it's something we don't think about a lot. But it really is. It affects our whole being. You know, and we know now that if you simply are exposed to music or sound that's too loud for too long a period, your immune system drops significantly.
You know, what comes to mind is occasionally you'll read about someone who has been without hearing for a good part of their life, and something happens and restores that hearing, and the noise that's around them is extremely, extremely difficult to acclimate to. So noise is different than the music of the flute, you see. So I think that I know that there are probably some misconceptions around healing and music. And what do people tell you?
Well, for one thing, people tend to think music therapy is for very old people and children. And I always say music is for everyone, and the therapy part too. We all need the arts for one thing, and we all need music in our life. In fact, there was a study done in Sweden, a huge study. I think they had 12,000 people that they followed for quite a few years, and they found that the people that regularly were involved in the arts somehow had significantly longer longevity than people that didn't expose themselves to the arts. So that was pretty incredible. You know, these people, they showed they're living longer because they have the arts in their life somehow.
Well, you know, I think that often one might say that music and painting and poetry and literature are food for the soul. And I think that anything we do to feed our soul makes our inner strength come out often.
Yeah.
Don't you think so?
Absolutely. And people will say in the hospital setting, you know, it's all about the body. You know, I've jokingly said sometimes it's kind of like when I went in the hospital one time, I said it was like a toaster in for repair.
Yes.
You know, you get this body fixed and you're out. But we have these emotions that affect our immune system in a huge way, and that's been proven. And music affects our emotions, and therefore it affects our immune system. It can make it go up or down. And then we also have a spiritual side that needs to be addressed.
And those things are intertwined, I think, more than what we realize. I really do.
They really are, and I see this definitely in the hospital rooms, and also in the healing concert. People will come up and say, like, there are all kinds of people that come to this. People that are going through grief, people that are actively involved with diseases like cancer and things, and
the curious.
And the curious, yeah. People that just, or people into wellness who want to learn more about holistic things. But for example, I had a woman, we did a healing concert in St. Joe, and this lady came to me or wrote me a letter later, and she said, you know, I had to drag my husband to this. I really wanted to, but he's, okay, I'll go. And she said he's had terrible high blood pressure for 3 or 4 years. I mean, really off the charts. And the medicine doesn't really help. But he begrudgingly came. And she said afterwards, he said, you know, that I felt more calm in that concert than I've felt in years. And he said, and it was the first time that I really associated my high blood pressure with anxiety and my own emotions.
The power of the mind is great. It truly is.
It is really great. So his blood pressure actually went down. And he got home, took his blood pressure, it was way down. And so even though he mentally, you know, did not want to come and really didn't have a good attitude, it had a huge effect on him.
What else have people said to you that just kind of blew you away?
Well, one thing that somebody said, which was amazing, that, have you heard of Esalen in California? It's a famous place that you go and take workshops about self-improvement. And it's a powerful, famous place that's been going on for quite a long time. Anyway, this one person said, going to your healing concert was worth 2 days of therapy at Esalen.
And you said, way to go.
Yeah, that was great. And then I've had people say, who were going through the grief process, this really helped me, and people have gotten a lot of insights about their own healing journey through the healing concert.
Well, you know, there has been quite a bit of research done on music therapy, and it has been shown to alter brain waves, breathing and heart rate, and other benefits, better health, positive focus, you know, is really important. And I think that really is where we're going, toward the positive focus, and as we manage our stress. So if I were a hospital patient, will you play something that you might use if you came to see me? You choose the flute that you would.
Well, I'd probably use this one. I just wanted to say, too, that this, speaking of therapeutic aspects, some people I know in New York did a study with Native American flutes and people with asthma, both children and adults. And they found that when people learned the native flute, which is much easier than you think versus our Western instruments, their asthma attacks went way down. So there's something therapeutic about the way it affects your lungs. And also, I think part of it is it gives you a creative outlet to, you know,
just kind of let things go, maybe.
I think so. I believe that people need creative outlets. Like I had a friend whose husband died, and she happens to be a piano player, and she has been her whole life. And she said, you know, I don't know what I would have done after he died. It was so difficult. And I'd sit down and play the piano, and then that would help my grief incredibly.
Because I think it the power of the mind is great. And I think when you hear this soothing music, or when you play the piano and you enjoy what you hear, it takes your mind off of the, you know, kind of like this, and lets things flow a little more gently.
Yeah,
I think.
It does. It really does. Okay. And then a lot of people request hymns.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Can you play a hymn on this thing? Okay. Isn't that interesting? How hard is it to learn to play this?
Well, it's not very hard. I'll show you on this one because it's easier to see. The uniqueness about the native flute is basically the native scale is a 5-note scale, like. And I have a 2-hour class for adults that I teach, and basically I teach them this scale, and once you learn that and how to stay on that, everything sounds good within it. So you don't have to use music. You know how the natives pass down everything auditorily? Well, they did with music too. So what you do is you take that scale and then you change rhythms and add trills, and that's...
So am I understanding this correctly? You sort of make it up as you go sometimes?
You really do. You make it up from the heart. I mean, you can have written songs, and you can have specific songs, but that's how native music was passed down. It's not like our Western music where you have to read music. And that's why this is such a great therapeutic instrument. I've taught so many adults how to play this who don't read music. And
well, but it seems to me that it's kind of analogous to singing, because you can sing a song that you know, that you've heard, and you don't have any music in front of you. And often that's the way you play the flute.
Yeah, it is, as long as you know how to stay on that scale. It's true, and the Native Americans say the flute is like singing with your breath, which is such a beautiful thought.
Singing with your breath. Isn't that pretty? It is. It's beautiful.
It is, and it's very profound once you play this, because you realize this is all about your breath in this stick of wood.
You know, sometimes I think it's as simple as taking the time, as they say, to smell the roses. People don't do that. The time that they take to listen to this beautiful sound is the time that one might take to smell the roses. And I think it releases much. Has there ever been any research done on the healing properties of music? Do you know of any? I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, for one thing, there's studies that show that just hearing music that's very pleasant for you, that it increases positive hormones. Like there's a hormone called IgA, which has to do with your immune system. And when you hear music that makes you feel really good, you produce more of that hormone.
It's as good as broccoli.
Yeah. I mean, it really, I mean, you know how you can hear, you can be in one state of mind, and you can hear a little bit of music, and it can take you to a different state of mind very quickly.
Very quickly. If you allow it. Don't you have to be in the right frame of mind to do it?
Well, that's true to some extent, except the man who came, whose wife drug him to the healing concert.
His frame of mind was not so wonderful.
It wasn't at all, but the music started to soften him up. And I'll give you another example. We see this in the hospital a lot. I had a man who was obviously a businessman, and we go in, and his wife's there, and he's on the phone. He's in his hospital gown on his phone, and he's got his charts and everything, and we went in and said the nurse said we should come in to play for him. Oh no, I don't have time for that. I've got business to do. I mean, I got to get out of here, and I've got all this stuff to do. And so anyway,
and you persevered.
Yeah. Well, so we don't force it on anybody.
Yeah.
But his wife said, "But wait a minute, I need it." So just play. And so he said, "Okay." And so anyway, we started playing, and after like 6 minutes or so, we stopped and we were ready to go because we didn't want to push this on him. And he said, "I am really sorry." He said, "That made me feel so much better. I realized I'm just so wound up, and I'm not going to heal if that's my attitude," which is really true. You have to slow down.
You have to give it a chance, too. Yeah.
Yeah, your body can't heal when you're just uptight all the time. You have to slow down a little bit and let the healing process take over. And that's where music really helps.
Do you find that it's a satisfactory way to approach children in distress?
Yeah, it definitely is. They definitely respond.
Better than adults?
Oh, maybe some, but adults respond really well too.
Do you always see the same response with the same piece of music?
Not always, but there are some pieces of music that we can almost predict. Like with some people in the hospital, they're really ill and they just feel really bad and can't move much. We play something really slow and gentle.
Try just a few little bars.
Well, like well, I'll have the notes be elongated. Just something very slow, and because when you're really sick, your nervous system can't process complex sound.
So you have to give people time to process what they're hearing. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Or sometimes we'll play classical music like Bach's Air on a G string. It is so beautiful, and that's something that always
on the lower. Can you play it?
Well, I can't really. I don't play that on the flute.
Oh, you don't play that on the. What do you play it on?
Well, sometimes we have a little portable keyboard, and I play that with a violinist.
So you don't always use a flute?
Most of the time I do, but sometimes we'll do other things. Especially, these aren't that great for classical music. These are more for...
Well, they don't have as complicated a music structure in them. Yeah, I can understand.
Right.
But what I hear you saying is that different people do respond differently to the type of music, the maybe even the instrument, and I think I always think about Henry David Thoreau, and he said, if a man does not keep pace with his companions, perhaps it is because he hears a different drummer, and let him step to the music which he hears, however measured or far away. And I think that's really what you present. Do people hear something different with that music?
I think they do. There's a saying that you see the arts, or you experience the arts through your soul. And I think that's really true. I think people they hear the music from what they need. And I'll give you an example of this. Sometimes these native flutes are in a minor key. And sometimes I'll play these and people will say, "Oh, that's so sad." Whereas the next person says, "Oh, I didn't see that as sad at all. I saw that as calming." So that's an example of how an individual would respond differently, but they're just projecting what's inside of them onto the music.
I want to pull out a thread that you just mentioned, and you said something about seeing with your skull, and they hear the music. There's nothing to see except the instrument you're playing. Do they see something? Do you think people see something when they hear that music?
They do. In fact, there's a lot of people will see mental images with music. And of all the art forms, music produces mental imagery more than any other, kind of like a dream in a waking state.
Really?
And that, yeah, like when we play for people in the hospital, I'll often say, just close your eyes and just see what comes to your mind. And sometimes people who can't move will say, I see myself ice skating in these real slow rhythmic patterns, and it feels good to them. You know, even when their body can't move, but they're mentally seeing themselves move and be relaxed. So that kind of thing happens.
So let's pull that out. Often that music takes them where they would like to be.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that interesting?
It really does.
I think that's just fascinating.
And images come up that are important for people that sometimes they haven't even thought about.
In many years.
Mm-hmm.
Or that they haven't thought about at all.
Yeah, that's right.
I think that's just fascinating. What's one of the most interesting things that anyone has ever said to you that they that happened to them as they experienced the
As they experience the music?
Mm-hmm.
Well, a lot of people say at the healing concert, I'm so glad I came to this. Because it is hard to describe to people what it is. It's not like just going to a regular concert.
Well, that's right. That's right.
But
Mm-hmm.
one of the most fascinating things, and I've had so many, so it's hard to say, but I had a woman who was in a very bad car accident, and she had neuropathy in her fingertips.
Mm-hmm.
She couldn't feel anything
Right.
really. And I started to teach her the flute, and you have to be able to feel to put your fingers over the holes. Because if you have a little crack, you're going to get squeaks, air escapes.
Can't have that.
And the sound was so motivating to her that she practiced and practiced, and she began to get feeling in her fingertips from this constant practicing of this, and then being rewarded with the beautiful calming sound, that she now has full feeling in her fingertips.
You must never cease to be amazed at the metamorphosis that
Mm-hmm.
comes over your clients. To me, that's just. Has it caused you to change your methods over the years? Anything?
Yeah, I'm always trying to refine
Mm-hmm.
and make things better, but I have had so many different experiences. I know that sound is just so important to people. It really makes a difference. And most people think, you know, we hear with our ears, but sound actually comes into our muscles. And so you hear with your whole body.
You hear with your whole body. And I just cannot tell you how wonderful it's been to have you, Janalea. And I know that all of you have learned something from one of our neighbors that you didn't know before, because I know that I have. And I guess as I tell you thank you for being with us, I would wish all of us to have a soul filled with the music of contentment and peace. And I think that Plato probably said it best. And if you will just play a few notes as I tell you what Plato said.
Yeah.
He said, music is a moral law. It gives soul to the universe, wings to the mind, flight to the imagination, and charm and gaiety to life and to everything. Thank you for being with us. Janalea Hoffman, Rhythmic Medicine and Sounds of Comfort. She's a music therapist. Thank you, Janalea.
Thank you.
Thank you.